your presentation and demonstrating the resilience of the Palestinian people in their country and through technical difficulties as well. Now I'd like to present the next session, which is actually on one of my personal favorite topics, which is and one that truly encapsulates the spirit of the MENA ICT Forum. We're going to be diving into the the incredible potential of collaborations between the private sector and the public sector, and how that can stimulate the startup ecosystem and empower them towards success. Please welcome the session's moderator, Mr. Omar Christidis, the co-founder and CEO of Arabnet. And our esteemed panelists, starting with Mr. Odeh Haddadin, the Digital Business Sector Manager at the Ministry of Digital Economy and Entrepreneurship. Mr. Essa, Founding Partner and CEO of Vision Ventures. Mr. Abdullah Khan, Market Systems Development Technical Director at Iqlaa. And Ms. Sheila Bergen, Innovation Driven Markets Director at the DCO.
Thank you. I love the after lunch energy. This is amazing. And it seems we have very popular panelists. Let's give them another round of applause. Yes, yes. Okay, we have a great topic today, which is how do the public and private sectors collaborate to drive innovation and startup ecosystems? And what can we learn from practical experiences within this domain? Just before we start, let's see who's in our audience. If you're an entrepreneur, raise your hand. Entrepreneurs. Raise them high so I can see them. Great. Okay. If you're an ecosystem organization, a fund, an investor, accelerator. If you're a donor type organization or entity that's a NGO entity. Okay, we have investors. Do we have investors in the room? A couple. Okay, we have some good number of investors. Nice. We've got a nice mix here today, so thank you all for joining us. And as we see startup pitches all the time on stage, we're going to start out with actually our speakers, each of them giving us a 1-minute pitch about their business or initiative or activity. And we'll start with you, Odeh, please.
Of course. Thank you, Omar. My name is Odeh Haddadin.
No.
From the Ministry of Digital. Hello?
No, it was on before. Yeah. Try it again.
Hello? Hello?
Maybe they need to raise the volume? Or?
Hello?
Go ahead. Yeah, there you go.
Okay. So my name is Odeh Haddadin. I work with the Ministry of Digital Economy and Entrepreneurship as a Digital Business Sector Manager in the Youth Technology and Jobs Project. So our main focus and domain is basically to enable and empower the private sector and support the startups ecosystem to create more jobs, in a nutshell. Yeah, this is my pitch.
And you're giving out money?
Money and support, emotional support.
Good, amazing. And doing excellent programs to really help drive the ecosystem. Thank you. Qais.
Assalamu alaikum jami'an. Proud to be here with you. Omar, thank you for the invitation. So my name is Essa. Myself and my partner Haytham there. We started together the first internet service provider in Saudi Arabia back in 1994. And then in 2016, we established Vision Ventures, one of the most active VCs in the MENA region. We're an early stage VC that's by entrepreneurs for entrepreneurs.
Amazing. And Qais is also the vice chairman of the Saudi Venture Capital and Private Equity Association, so has good visibility also on the broader ecosystem of investing in the kingdom. Welcome. Abdullah.
Thank you. So my name is Abdullah Khan. I'm the Market Systems Development Director at USAID Iqlaa. So if I may, I would like to briefly introduce Iqlaa and also sort of highlight how Iqlaa is sort of addressing some of the ecosystem challenges. So Iqlaa is a 5-year USAID funded program that focuses on home-based businesses and micro and small enterprises and helping them grow, transform, and become resilient. There's a consortium of 8 partners that are implementing it, led by Mercy Corps. So what's interesting about Iqlaa is that it employs a hybrid development approach. So that is a mix of direct delivery and the market systems development approach. That is to ensure that we achieve sustainable and long-term impact. And just very briefly want to touch upon the market system development approach, as it might be new for some of the audience here. So it's really the market systems development approach looks at the underlying causes for market inefficiencies or why they're underperforming, and then it looks to work with private sector, public sector, and the civil society to overcome some of those challenges to make those markets inclusive and work better, in this particular case, for startups and micro and small enterprises and home-based businesses. How it's a little different to traditional approaches, it's more sustainable because the impact of this approach outlives the life of the program. And it also is more scalable as the benefits are widespread and they go beyond just benefiting a lucky few beneficiaries. And it's also inclusive as it ensures that the benefits reach out to everyone. So Iqlaa is actually using the market system development approach. It is working very closely with the private sector to unlock growth opportunities and also to ensure that it's addressing market inefficiencies. And lastly, just want to quickly also say that, the end goal for us is to really ensure that startups, home-based businesses, and micro and small enterprises thrive independently without continuous reliance on aid so that they can grow and become resilient over time. Thank you.
Thank you, Abdullah. And there are so many programs, and then this idea that really we need to build programs that launch companies without the need for continuous aid, I think is really, really critical. Sheila.
Thank you so much. My name is Sheila Birgem. I am an investor, an entrepreneur, and an ecosystem enabler. I am currently the Innovation-Driven Markets Director at the Digital Cooperation Organization. What we do at the DCO is we look at digital prosperity for all our member states. We have 16 member states serving 800 million people. And we look at that, especially within our unit, in terms of building the digital economy. So bringing all these different stakeholders together, be it entrepreneurs, investors, but also governments, to ensure that the ecosystems that we are building in the digital space is cohesive and it enables and brings everyone on board. I'm happy to be here. This is my first time in Jordan. I love it. Yeah.
Welcome, Sheila. And Sheila's been on both sides of the fence. She's been on the startup side, on the government side, and now in a kind of transnational policy role. So she can share interesting experiences from her background. So let's dive right in. If we look at the Jordanian market today, what do you see as some of the key ecosystem challenges? And what's the role of your organization in addressing some of those challenges? And maybe we'll start with you, Odeh, again, as the ministry, with your view of everything that's going on and your variety of initiatives.
Of course. Thank you, Omar. This is a very good question. And I think that's why some sort of projects like the Jordan Source and YTJ are there to solve some of those important challenges and problems. So I would say definitely there is no say that we need more and more upskilling program to actually help us bridging the gap between the demand and supply in Jordan, especially. On the other side, we have the problem of market access, proper market access for growth stage startups, for SMEs, and this is something we're tackling through our programs and incentives, especially the market expansion incentive. Also, our focus would go towards enable and empower the startups by actually doing the extra mile, doing the work of connecting them to different VCs, to different deal makers, to different support programs in other countries in addition to Jordan. So I would say these are the major problems that we are focusing on, which will lead eventually to our main focus, which is creating jobs.
Okay, excellent. So upskilling, access to markets. Is there anything else that you mentioned?
Basically, funding.
Funding, excellent. And we're gonna turn this back to you, our audience, to get your thoughts on which are the most important of these challenges that really need to be addressed. Abdullah, maybe we'll go to you now. Also, your work is mainly in the Jordanian market.
Yeah, sure. So just to add to some of the challenges that have been highlighted, so the way, firstly, we need to ensure that, we're looking at a more sustainable way of addressing some of these ecosystem challenges, but some of the challenges that Iqlaa is looking to address or that we feel are out there are access to markets, access to finance, access to business development services, as well as logistical challenges, also the way businesses source their inputs and their marketing capabilities. So these are all challenges that are out there, and how Iqlaa is looking to address some of those is really through fostering linkages between businesses and market players, also improving access to finance, and then finally we're also looking to strengthen the business ecosystem so that it becomes more resilient and inclusive over time so businesses can benefit from it.
Thank you. I didn't hear anyone say regulation. Well, let's ask our audience. How many people here?
Can I touch on that?
Yeah, definitely. Please, guys.
I'll touch on something else and then come.
Yeah, please.
So I think for us as an investor, we have a view of the Arabian market.
Yes.
Or the MENA market in general. I think the MENA market needs each other. Jordan has a lot of value in terms of the human capital. So there is human capital, there is a lot of talent in Jordan that needs to really be given the opportunity to shine. And I think there have been a lot of programs that did that in the past. If you look at international companies establishing some of their centers, tech centers here. Through our partnership also with ISSF, we've been able also to support Jordanian startups by investing in them and then also creating a causeway for them into Saudi Arabia and other markets where they can also grow their businesses. With that, we're seeing, again, if you talk about the limitations, let's say. So probably one of them is definitely each market has its limitation in terms of size. And this is where probably what we do helps, because when they come up to that size in Jordan, they can always scale into other markets such as Saudi Arabia and the GCC, and that's something we can easily support with and help with. We're also seeing a lot of similarities in terms of regulation, as you said, when you asked about regulation. So I think Saudi Arabia is ahead in terms of regulation, but we're seeing great steps that are being done here in Jordan that seem to be in the right path toward a bright future, hopefully soon.
Okay, thank you, Qais. So I do want to ask our audience. So I'd like you to raise your hand if you think I'm going to walk through the different challenges, and I want you to raise your hand if you think this is a key challenge in the Jordanian market, okay? We'll start with access to talent and skills. Raise your hand if you think this is a key challenge. Okay, couple of hands. Access to funding. Raise your hand if you think this is a key challenge. Okay, we have a lot more on funding. Access to markets and customers. Raise your hand if you think this is a key challenge. Okay, maybe about as many as the funding. What about regulation? People who believe regulation is a key challenge? Okay, fewer. Anybody see infrastructure? We didn't hear it from our panelists, but infrastructure as a challenge? Okay, so the audience definitely also agrees with our panelists, not to mention. So interesting, our audience really feels that access to markets and access to funding are some of the key challenges. Now, we're in the Middle East region. The public sector is taking a key role in driving the ecosystem in many places. We are talking about public-private partnerships here. What are some of the key success factors that make ecosystem development programs successful? And maybe we'll start with you, Abdullah, switch things around. And also, if you have examples, not just from the Jordanian market, but we welcome Sheila and Qais from other markets, from Africa, from Saudi. What makes ecosystem development programs successful?
Thank you. So I think what's most important is to sort of, one of the key success factors for ecosystem development programs is to sort of take a holistic approach, which recognizes the interconnectedness between different market systems. And this interconnectedness ensures that improvements in one area has a cascading positive effect in other areas. So, such as, improvements in access to finance could lead to improvements in access to markets as well for businesses. And this is, again, one of the things that, Iqlaa looks at. We look at things together to ensure that, we can achieve sustainable outcomes and more stronger outcomes. So just to share an example of some of the work that we're doing here, and I'll like to give an example from Jordan only, how these improvements in different systems actually helps bring about changes in the overall ecosystem. So in the retail sector, with mini marts, Iqlaa is working with the private sector on technology-driven market-based interventions, which improves these mini marts, which are called dukans here, their access to inputs. Now, as a result of these technology platforms, these dukans are now able to access competitive pricing, faster deliveries, and also access to a wider assortment of goods. Similarly, we're also working with the digital payment service provider to ensure that these mini marts are now connected to their distributors and suppliers, which ensures that not only they have access to digital financial services now, but they can also improve their operational efficiencies and also their creditworthiness to access finance. So when you look at this, together, and these combined improvements result in an ecosystem which is more encouraging towards entrepreneurship, and it provides the right sort of support, the networks and the tools for businesses, including startups, to succeed.
Okay. And what do you think are some of the key factors that led to the success of this program?
I think it's looking at, again, back to what I was saying, it's taking a holistic approach. When we go and, it's happened over time that programs come in and they just laser or sort of focus on one particular area and not taking a holistic view of things. That often leads to, because you can't really improve one side when the other system is still underperforming. So I think that's the key, really, to look at the big picture and look at holistically.
Okay, great. Look at the picture, big picture, holistically, and look for synergies. Sheila, we haven't heard from you yet. Would welcome your input on this.
Thank you. I think one of the questions you asked earlier to the audience was one of the biggest challenges that is there, and they said access to markets. And I think this is where the PPP comes in quite critically. Access to markets could be a local challenge, but it could also be access to regional markets. It could also be access to global markets. And it's very difficult to access those markets if you don't have enough data or information to inform you where the gaps in those markets are. And this is where these engagements could be critical. For instance, one of our member countries is Rwanda. They have one of the highest, if you're in the morning session, you had our Secretary General talk about this. They have one of the highest internet penetration, but the usage of internet is quite low, sometimes because of affordability of the internet, but equally affordability of devices. So assuming you are in a market like, say, Pakistan, Oman, where you have low-cost devices that you're selling in your market, it's really easy for an entrepreneur from this market to scale to a market that they know there's a big opportunity for them. And so that's where governments then come in place, because governments could actually talk to other governments in these regions to be able to incentivize private sector from that region to work with this new country that has an opportunity. And this happens only when you have information, data on where the opportunities are. You also have to have a very clear goal of collaboration. Why is it that we want to access this market? And we've seen this in traditional industries working. One country sells tea to another country sells another product to another country. This could also happen in the digital space. So I think public-private partnerships need to go beyond just borders. I think they also need to cross borders, especially in the digital space, for the success of these things to happen. That's number one. The second thing, it also has to be, and this is more local, and I'll give you examples from what we've done, but also what I've seen in other countries. It has to be very niche focused. You see a lot of PPP working in industries, in traditional industries, in mining, in things like that, because it's very niche. It's very clear, in this industry, this is what we want to do. But I feel like a lot of us, especially in the technology space or in the digital space generally, it's agnostic. We want to help everyone and we want to work with everyone. And sometimes you don't find clear synergies because there's very limited key or success factors that each of you feels they'll benefit by joining these partnerships. So I feel those two are quite important. And we've seen this in some of the work we're doing, for instance, in the Gambia, in Nigeria, where we're working with the government and private sector to support offline businesses, women-led offline businesses. We keep hearing SMEs, MSMEs are, the backbone of economies in our countries, but equally, we hear that 90% of these businesses fail. So where is the disconnect? Yet these people are the ones supporting the economy, but again, these are the people failing. So what really is happening? It has to be that information should inform what type of support is offered to these type of businesses. If these businesses are not able to scale because of regulation, if these businesses are not able to scale because of cost, operational costs, CapEx or OpEx is quite high for them to run their businesses, what can governments do in collaboration with private sector to ensure that if we are creating an enabling environment, be it using policy or incentivizing private sector to be able to offer services to these businesses, then that ultimately gives everybody success. I feel those are quite critical. Thank you.
Thank you, Sheila. So we're looking at really being data-driven, analytically understanding what are the challenges, formulating programs to address those, and to be really focused. And niche programs sound like, in your perspective, would be the most successful. I'm going to go to you, Odeh, and then would love to hear Qais's view from the Saudi market. There are so many things, and Saudi's really moved their tech ecosystem to here. But first, from your experience, you're also collaborating with many partners and programs. What makes these programs successful?
Definitely, Omar. I'm going to say it in a very general way that we say it in Jordan. I believe that Jordan is built over communities. And it's really, really important that all the community, all the ecosystem, just align on the goal, on what they really want, on the vision, on one vision. And definitely all stakeholders can work within their domains and expertise. VCs can work on their part to get the best deals out there. Incubators can make us rich with pipelines and startups. Also academia, also government, everyone should work in alignment. Most important is the dialogue that we do at MoDEE. So every time we design a new program, every time we take feedback from our startups, from the community, from the SMEs, even from our beneficiaries that we do upskilling programs for them. So communication with the local ecosystem, which will put the trust on top of everything, which will make us move forward.
Okay, thank you. So clarity around shared vision and objectives that bring everyone together working towards the same goal, and also having the platform for dialogue between the private sector and public sector. Qais, what can you share with us from the Saudi experience?
Thank you. So I think the Saudi experience, as you said, has been really amazing, and it's still continuing. But I think there is a lot that we can learn from that. So I'm very close to that experience for sure. So when we started, let's just put some numbers to what's happening. So when we started in 2016, and I looked up these numbers lately, so in 2016, the amount of funding for startups in Saudi Arabia was a mere $8 million only. That's the time when we started investing. Today, of course, as you know, Saudi Arabia is the largest country in the MENA region with funding towards startup, and that's a success with over 1.3, 1.4, almost $1.4 billion. So that tells us something worked, right? And I think there are several things that the government did. And one of the most important ones is definitely Vision 2030, because Vision 2030 put the roadmap. And I think the roadmap is really the most important thing. It told all of us where the country is going, what the country intends to do, what are the most important programs that the country is going to work on, such as tourism. One of the most important programs, by the way, was the Financial Sector Development Program. And with that came a lot of regulation. You know, the fintech regulation, all of that started 2018, 2019, and it wasn't until 2020 when we started to see fintechs. Today, fintechs funding in Saudi is over $4.6 billion, with with thousands of jobs that have been created. On the other side, the government is listening, and I think that's a very important aspect, where the government is not just going and doing whatever they think is right. They always are sitting with us and with other ecosystem players and making sure that they listen and understand what the market really needs. And at least for us, on monthly basis, we have meetings with ministries, and on quarterly basis, we're meeting a minister on different ministries. And that's really amazing. I mean, let's look back 6 years or 5 years, that's something we dream of, you know. But even if they meet you, they would just sit there just to listen, but it's not really something that they would act on. What's happening now is different. They act on it, there is an agenda. People will come after a couple of weeks and tell you what did they actually achieve. And there is a follow-on. So there is a different approach from the government. It's clear that the government has a clear agenda that they want to achieve, clear goals and KPIs that are being achieved. On the other side, you can see the tourism has opened up. That has helped a lot with entrepreneurs, investors coming into the country much easier than before. The entrepreneurship license from the Ministry of Investment has been also amazing. We're also part of that program to support companies to come and set up in Saudi Arabia. So any company today, by the way, can ask for a license and get it online, or submit the request online and get the license probably within 24 to 48 hours, if not faster. These are things that has happened and has helped the ecosystem. I don't want to forget, of course, funding, which was one of the first things that the government did, with establishment of 2 fund of funds companies, Jeddah as part of PIF, and SVC program. Also, there is NTDP, the National Technology Development Program, that really looked at what are the gaps, what does the market need. So let's say one of the gaps, for example, is how do you keep Saudi talent into startups, while now bigger companies and the government is also attracting that talent. So there is a subsidiary program for that supports talented programs. There is a program to support R&D, for example, which is a very difficult area for investors to really put money, because it takes time for money to come back. But I think there are things and gaps that are still out there. I think not just in Saudi, but in the whole region. So M&A support is still needed. I think when we look at the US, we're looking at tax. There are no taxes on any kind of VC transactions. These are the things we're always, of course, are looking after, and I think the ecosystem altogether wants to aspire together.
Thank you, Qais. And so here again, we see the government not necessarily implementing, but leading the vision setting, leading the priorities, and then kind of creating the space for the private sector, as well as kind of the importance of the ease of entry, the ease of regulation, the ability to move, set up, and the dialogue, as already Odeh mentioned, the key focus of dialogue. I don't know if you wanted to add something, Abdullah, on this, because I think you also have a platform around dialogue as well, right?
Yeah.
Absolutely. So public-private dialogue is one of the key pillars of Iqlaa, and it's something that Iqlaa is heavily going to be supporting over the next 3 years. Now, I think it's really important that we take a step back and focus on this, because what this allows is that the government and the private sector to come together and sort of agree on national priorities and objectives, but also it gives a chance to the private sector to really influence policy change and also sort of ensure more practical and effective decision making, which can lead to more sustainable outcomes. So yeah, so that's where Iqlaa is heavily invested now, and we're supporting the public-private dialogue at different sectoral levels, but also at the national and subnational level.
Okay, thank you. I guess...
Omar, if I may add a quick one.
Sure, I'm going to ask my next question, and then I'll start with you. You can add, and then just because I'm mindful of our time, we don't have much left. What should the role of government really be within this domain, right? Beyond regulation, which is clear, the government needs to regulate, and we hear about government as enabler, operator, regulator. What should the role of government be, and how can the government support this ecosystem? What can the government do to serve players like you better, investors better, or other private sector entities better? So we'll start with you, Qais, on this. Then we'll go Sheila, and we'll come back.
Let me go back to
sure.
my point so I don't forget it. So
yes.
I think one of the things that are very important is also for policy change is to have one voice. As much as possible to have one voice of what are we asking for.
One voice from the private sector?
From the private sector.
So this is the importance of things like associations.
Yes, so that's what I want to say. So the VCPA association in Saudi Arabia really helped all of the VCs and private equity to come together, think of the priorities. What are the most important things we want to ask the government? And I think through that, we've been able to deliver one message that's clear, consistent across everyone, and that everyone agrees to. I think that's really key, and it will make the government's job much easier. So I think that's very important. So I don't know. I answered part of what the government should be doing in terms of.
No, sure, but how can they become a more effective partner for the private sector?
I think again, I might be repeating what I'm saying, but listening is really key factor in achieving that goal. Because that's where you really listen and really understand what the market really wants. Because that also changes with time. It's not the same today as it is going to be probably a year from now. So I think that's very, very important. And listen to the right people, to people who are really in the economy, in the act of whatever you are looking to listen to.
Okay, thank you. Sheila, I would love to hear your experience on this.
Yeah, thank you. As enablers who work with entrepreneurs and as investors, we always ask startups to go back to the customer and ask questions before they can, operationalize the ideas that they have. And this approach should be taken by all the stakeholders, including government. If you're building policies for a given constituent or a group of people, I think it's important to be on the same table with those people to ultimately listen. But also, I think there's a big assumption that government doesn't have a problem. People invest in people, and people also work in government. So ultimately, we have to build those relationships with government so that we can also create solutions for government. It's not just solutions that we are creating outside of that scope. If you look at it in the broader scheme of things, government is really the people. It's, yes, run by individuals, but they are supposed to organize the people. So I like the conversation about organizing yourself. It's difficult for government to talk to every single citizen, but if as private sector, if as individuals who are going to benefit from this, we organize, then it's easy for us to talk to government, that unified voice. But when we are going to talk to government, is not to just ask and tell, but it's co-development. So I think that's what government needs to do. Co-developing of regulations and policies together with the people that this is going to affect, these policies are going to affect their businesses. I think the other thing that I feel is a critical part for government is to play a role in opening markets for its constituents. Because if we look at our markets as countries, individual markets, we have very small markets. But if we have a unified voice, and this is why when you look at economic blocks, they benefit a lot because they have, it's not just one country. If I'm building a solution today, I'm thinking of 16 other countries, for instance, in our case, that this market could easily scale into. I don't want to mention different economic blocks, but you know them. And you know how those entrepreneurs, especially in developed countries, how those entrepreneurs benefit because they can get access to funding from any other country in those regions. They can get access to market to any of those countries. They can hire and get talent, if it's skill they're looking for, from any of that other countries. So as government, I feel it's important that, yes, we play these roles locally, but we have, government has the power to be able to form those partnerships and synergies to become an advocate for its entrepreneurs or for its ecosystem in a different market and open those markets for its people.
Thank you, Sheila. Definitely, the Middle East markets all combined would be smaller than some markets in Europe. And all the European countries have combined because they want to have a sizable enough market to be able to have influence on global economics and politics. So certainly, I think it's a powerful message to government around this. They would love to hear. We are seeing different examples of types of government intervention. We do see government setting up companies, setting up funds, setting up initiatives. How do you in the ministry see the role of the government?
Yeah, definitely. We do believe that government work basically focus around policy making, facilitation, enabling the private sector, doing partnerships with different countries to actually make our private sector lives easier, even when entering new markets. But at the same time, the government sometimes, and this is my personal opinion, should act all the time in different countries as a startup, to think as a startup, agile, and change their way of thinking. And this is what we do, especially when we collaborate with our startups, with the private sector. They should solve our problems, our challenges through open innovation models, which we adopt everywhere around the world. And we should focus as government on setting up the vision, which was originally generated from the public, from the private sector, because based on their problems, on their issues, etc. Now, based on all of that, that was the birth of the Youth Technology and Jobs, where we, in collaboration with different entities like World Bank, like the private sector, different government agencies, we reached to a point that this is what we need to do for the coming 5 to 7 years. And that was the birth of YTJ since 2020, now till 2027, which will focus on upskilling, will focus on enabling the private sector by giving them grants with certain KPIs that they should achieve, including access to new markets, including hiring Jordanians, including training, enabling startups. So many things was done under this project because of this partnership and because of the, let's say, the vision that was clear, in my opinion. I'm not saying we're perfect. I'm saying we're getting there.
Thank you, Odeh. And I like this as a note to end on for the government to think like a startup, it maybe be or try to be more agile. And some of your notes make me think of the government using market systems and dynamics in the way that Abdullah was talking about earlier, maybe to help drive some of the impact that it wants to create. I think we're about done with our time. Thank you so much to all of our panelists, and thank you to our audience for joining us. Thank you.